Amelia Harcourt heard the muffled groan through the mahogany door and froze. She'd only stepped into this corridor to escape the oppressive heat of the Whitmore ballroom, where London's lesser nobility twirled under candlelight that cost more than her monthly rent. The invitation to attend had been unexpected, a bonus for dressing the Whitmore daughters in gowns that made them look almost elegant. She should have stayed near the refreshment table, invisible and grateful. Instead, she'd followed the sound of distress. Her hand was already on the door handle when she heard the second sound, not a groan of pain, but something else entirely. A woman's breathless gasp, a man's low murmur. Oh. Amelia yanked her hand back as if burned. She should leave, should return to the ballroom and pretend she'd heard nothing. But then came the third sound, a sharp, feminine gasp, followed by frantic rustling. "Someone's coming down the hall," the woman hissed. "Felix, someone will see." The panic in that voice made Amelia's decision for her. She pushed open the door. The scene inside would have been almost comical if not for the sheer terror on the young woman's face. Lady Catherine Fairfax, Amelia recognized her from the gossip sheets, stood pressed against a writing desk, her elaborately coiffed blonde hair listing to one side, her lips swollen. The man caging her in had the same honey blonde hair, though his was thoroughly mussed. His cravat hung loose, his jacket discarded on a chair. Lord Felix Ashworth, second son of the Duke of Thornhill. Both of them stared at Amelia with identical expressions of horror. "I can hear footsteps," Amelia said calmly, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "You have approximately 30 seconds before whoever's out there reaches this door." Lady Catherine made a sound like a wounded animal. "Oh God, we're ruined." "Not necessarily." Amelia's mind raced through possibilities, discarding each one as quickly as it formed. Then her gaze snagged on Lady Catherine's gown, pale blue silk with delicate embroidery at the hem. Beautiful work, not Amelia's, unfortunately. She stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind her. "I need a needle and thread." Felix finally found his voice. "What?" "Needle and thread, quickly." Amelia was already reaching into her reticule. She never left home without basic supplies, and withdrew a small leather case. "Lady Catherine, I'm going to damage your gown. Do you trust me?" "I don't even know who you are." "Amelia Harcourt. I'm a dressmaker." She moved forward with purpose, her hands already assessing the dress. "The Whitmore's dressmaker specifically. And right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and complete social annihilation." The footsteps outside grew louder. "What do you want?" Felix's voice had turned cold, calculating. He was frightened, but he was also clearly intelligent enough to recognize leverage when he saw it. Amelia met his eyes, pale blue like his brother's were rumored to be, and smiled. "We'll discuss terms after I save you. Lady Catherine, please tear your hem. Make it dramatic. I can't just... now." Perhaps it was the authority in Amelia's voice, or perhaps it was the sound of voices joining the footsteps outside, but Lady Catherine grabbed her hem and pulled. The delicate silk ripped with a sound like a whisper. Amelia dropped to her knees, needle already threaded. "When they come in, you say the dress tore while you were dancing. You were mortified, fled here to hide. Lord Felix, being a gentleman, found you in distress and immediately sought help. He brought me because I'm the newest dressmaker to the Ashworth family." "You're what?" Felix sputtered. "I am now." Amelia's needle flashed in the candlelight as she began a deliberately visible but uselessly decorative stitch. "Unless you'd prefer the alternative explanation for why you're alone in a room with Lady Catherine looking thoroughly kissed." The door opened. Amelia didn't look up from her work. She kept her hands steady, her expression serene, as if mending torn hems in darkened rooms at midnight was perfectly ordinary. "Lady Catherine." The voice belonged to an older woman, sharp with concern. "We heard." "Oh." Now Amelia glanced up. 3 figures stood in the doorway. An elderly matron she didn't recognize, a stern-looking gentleman, and a woman whose face could have been carved from marble. That last one wore diamonds worth more than Amelia's shop, and her honey-blonde hair was dressed in a style that declared her rank as clearly as a crown. The Dowager Duchess of Thornhill. Felix's mother. "Lord Felix," the Dowager said, her tone carefully neutral. "Perhaps you'd care to explain." Felix cleared his throat. To his credit, he managed to look appropriately embarrassed rather than guilty. Lady Catherine suffered an unfortunate accident with her gown, mother. She was understandably upset, fled here to compose herself. I happened upon her and thought it best to fetch Miss Harcourt immediately. Miss Harcourt, the dowager's gaze fixed on Amelia, who remained on her knees, needle still working. Your Grace. Amelia kept her voice respectful but not obsequious. The damage was minor. Lady Catherine will be perfectly presentable in a moment. How fortunate that my son knew exactly where to find a dressmaker at a ball. The dowager's words were silk over steel. Indeed. Amelia tied off her thread and rose, helping Lady Catherine to her feet. Lord Felix mentioned earlier this evening that the family had decided to engage my services for the season. I'm honored to be of use so quickly. The lie was enormous, dangerous, completely verifiable as false. But the dowager's eyes narrowed slightly, and Amelia saw the calculation there, saw the moment the older woman assessed the scene. Her son's disheveled appearance, Lady Catherine's flushed cheeks, the convenient story, and made a choice. Yes, the dowager said slowly. How fortunate we've retained Miss Harcourt. Lady Catherine, are you quite recovered? Yes, Your Grace. Lady Catherine dropped into a curtsy that was only slightly unsteady. Thank you for your son's quick thinking. Indeed. The dowager stepped aside. Perhaps you should return to your mother. I'm sure she's worried. The elderly matron, Lady Catherine's chaperone, Amelia realized, ushered the girl out quickly. The stern gentleman lingered a moment longer, his gaze suspicious, but eventually followed. The door closed. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. Then the dowager turned to her son, and Amelia saw where Felix had inherited his temper. You, the dowager said, her voice arctic, will go to the card room. You will remain there, visible and bored, for the rest of the evening. You will not speak to Lady Catherine again tonight. Am I understood? Yes, mother. Go. Felix cast one last look at Amelia, part gratitude, part resentment, and left. The dowager waited until his footsteps faded before addressing Amelia. You're clever. Thank you, Your Grace. That wasn't a compliment. The dowager circled Amelia slowly, assessing. You saw an opportunity and seized it. Blackmail dressed up as rescue. Amelia's pulse jumped, but she kept her chin high. I saw two young people about to destroy their reputations over a stolen kiss. I offered a solution. For a price. Yes. The admission hung between them. Amelia didn't flinch. She'd spent 5 years trying to break into the upper echelons of London's dressmaking trade. 5 years watching women with half her skill dress duchesses and countesses because they had the right name, the right connections. She'd waited long enough. I don't like being manipulated, Miss Harcourt. I don't like being invisible, Your Grace. Something changed in the dowager's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or unwilling respect. What exactly do you want? To dress your family for the season. To have my work seen by every woman of consequence in London. To prove that I'm the best dressmaker in this city. Ambitious. Talented. The dowager's lips twitched, almost a smile. We'll see. You'll come to Thornhill House tomorrow morning. You'll meet with me and assess what work needs to be done. If your skills match your audacity, we'll discuss terms. If not, her voice dropped. I'll ensure every door in London closes to you, permanently. Amelia's throat tightened, but she nodded. Understood. Good. The dowager moved toward the door, then paused. My eldest son will return from his northern estates in 2 days. Alexander is less tolerant of games than I am. I suggest you prove your worth quickly. Then she was gone, leaving Amelia alone in the room that smelled of beeswax candles and expensive cologne and her own reckless gamble. She'd done it. Actually done it. She'd blackmailed her way into the household of one of the most powerful families in England. Amelia pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart's wild rhythm, and laughed. The sound was slightly unhinged. She should be terrified. She probably was terrified. But beneath the fear ran something else, something bright and fierce and hungry. Opportunity. She'd waited 5 years for this chance. She'd take it, even if it meant blackmailing a duke's brother, facing down his formidable mother, and gambling her entire future on the skill of her own hands. The ballroom's music drifted through the walls, a waltz played by musicians who'd never worried about rent or reputation or being invisible forever. Amelia straightened her shoulders, returned her needle to her reticule, and walked back into the light. Thornhill House stood in Mayfair like a monument to aristocratic confidence. White stone, black iron, windows that gleamed even in morning drizzle. Amelia had passed it 100 times, always from the street, always looking up. Now she climbed the front steps with her 2 assistants trailing behind, all 3 of them carrying cases of supplies. The butler, ancient, impeccable, barely glanced at them before leading the way inside. "Miss Harcourt," he intoned, as if announcing minor foreign royalty, "Her Grace will receive you in the morning room." The interior was exactly as intimidating as Amelia had feared. Marble floors, oil paintings of disapproving ancestors, a chandelier that probably cost more than her shop's entire inventory. Her assistants, Beth and Margaret, both skilled seamstresses who'd worked with Amelia for 3 years, audibly gasped. Amelia resisted the urge to do the same. The morning room was less ostentatious, but somehow more intimidating for its restraint. Pale green walls, elegant furniture, and the Dowager Duchess seated by the window like a queen granting audience. "Miss Harcourt, punctual, that's promising." The Dowager gestured to the tea service laid out. "Sit." It wasn't an invitation. Amelia sat. Beth and Margaret remained standing, uncertain. "Your Grace, these are my assistants, Miss Beth Winters and Miss Margaret Colby. They're essential to my work." The Dowager's gaze flicked over them. "They'll be given rooms near the servants' quarters. You, Miss Harcourt, will have a room in the East Wing. I prefer to keep people I don't trust close." "How prudent. Don't mistake my cooperation for approval. You trapped my son in an impossible situation. You forced my hand. I respect the ruthlessness, but I don't forgive it." The Dowager poured tea with movements precise as surgery. "Mrs. Edith Langford has dressed this family for 20 years. She'll be informed today that her services are no longer required. She won't take it well." Amelia accepted the teacup, noting the fine porcelain, the subtle test of her manners. "I imagine not." "She's well connected, vindictive. You've made an enemy, Miss Harcourt." "I've made a career opportunity, Your Grace. We'll see which proves stronger." The Dowager set down her cup. "I need gowns for myself, day dresses and evening wear. My daughter-in-law requires an entire wardrobe. She's recently out of mourning. Lady Catherine's family has also requested your services for obvious reasons. And there will be balls, garden parties, outings to the opera. Can you manage this volume of work?" Amelia's mind raced through calculations. Fabric, time, labor, design. It was enormous, nearly impossible. "Yes. You sound confident." "I am." The Dowager studied her for a long moment. "You have the season, 12 weeks. At the end, I'll decide whether you've earned your place or merely stolen it. If you fail, if even one gown is substandard, if you create even a whisper of scandal, you'll be dismissed, without references, without mercy. Understood?" "Good, now." The Dowager stood. "Let me show you your workspace." The atelier was on the 2nd floor, facing south for optimal light. It was spacious, well-appointed, and clearly hastily cleared of whatever had occupied it before. Furniture marks still dented the carpet. "This will serve," Amelia said, already envisioning where she'd place the cutting table, the dress forms, the storage for fabric and trim. "The housekeeper will assist with anything you require. Meals will be brought to you if you're working. Don't abuse the privilege." The Dowager moved to the door, then paused. "One more thing. My sons will need to be measured for new evening wear. Felix you've met. Alexander arrives tomorrow." "The Duke?" "Yes. He's less easily charmed than his brother, more perceptive, more suspicious." The Dowager's expression was unreadable. "I suggest you be prepared." She left before Amelia could respond. Beth exhaled loudly. "We're going to die here. We're going to fail spectacularly. And die. We're not going to fail." Amelia set down her case and began unpacking. "We're going to work harder than we've ever worked. We're going to create gowns so beautiful that every woman in London will weep with envy. and we're going to make them remember the name Amelia Harcourt. Margaret, ever practical, was already measuring the windows. When do we start? Now. They worked through the morning, setting up equipment, organizing supplies, sketching initial designs. The Dowager sent a maid with measurements for herself and her daughter-in-law, along with fabric samples and notes on preferences. The information was detailed, exacting. Amelia was bent over her sketchbook, pencil flying across paper, when she heard voices in the hallway. "Ridiculous, Alexander. Mother's lost her mind. Mrs. Langford has been with us 20 years. There must be a reason. The reason is that this dressmaker blackmailed me." Amelia's hand stilled. That was Felix's voice, pitched low but audible through the half-open door. The second voice, deeper, calmer, must belong to the Duke. "Blackmailed you how?" A pause. Then Felix, quieter. "She caught me in a compromising position. With Lady Catherine. Threatened to expose us unless Mother hired her." "I see." The Duke's tone revealed nothing. "And you agreed to this? What choice did I have?" "Catherine would have been ruined." "How noble." The words were dry. "And now we're stuck with an opportunistic seamstress who thinks she can manipulate the family with impunity." Amelia's jaw tightened. She should announce herself, make her presence known. Instead, she remained still, listening. "Mother seems to think she's talented," Felix said. "Mother also thought your last mistress was charming. Forgive me if I trust my own judgment." Footsteps approached the door. "Where is this miracle worker?" "The atelier, I believe." "Perfect. Let's meet the woman who's clever enough to trap you and foolish enough to think it will work." The door swung fully open. 2 men stood in the corridor. Felix she recognized, still handsome, still petulant. The other was taller, broader through the shoulders, his honey-blonde hair slightly darker than his brother's. He wore riding clothes, expensive but practical, and his eyes were the pale blue of winter sky. Those eyes fixed on Amelia with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Miss Harcourt, I presume?" The Duke stepped into the room, assessing it and her with a single sweep of his gaze. "Alexander Ashworth, I hear you've joined our household under unusual circumstances." Amelia set down her pencil and stood. She'd be damned if she'd meet him from a position of weakness. "Your Grace, I'm pleased to make your acquaintance." "Are you?" It wasn't a question. He moved closer and she caught the scent of leather and rain and something crisp, like winter air. "My brother tells an interesting story. Blackmail dressed as rescue, quite clever." "Thank you." His eyebrows rose. "You're not going to deny it? Would there be any point? You've clearly already formed your opinion." "I've formed a hypothesis. I'm curious to see if the evidence supports it." He gestured to her sketchbook. "May I?" Amelia hesitated, then handed it over. Those were her designs, her private visions translated to paper. Letting him see them felt uncomfortably intimate. Alexander flipped through the pages slowly. His expression remained neutral, unreadable. When he reached the sketches for his mother's evening gown, a deep sapphire silk with subtle beading that would catch candlelight, he paused. "This is your work?" "Yes." "Not copied from fashion plates?" She felt the insult like a slap. "I don't copy." How refreshingly confident. He closed the book and handed it back. "Here's what I think, Miss Harcourt. I think you're talented. I think you're ambitious. I think you saw an opportunity to leverage my brother's indiscretion into a position you couldn't achieve through legitimate means." "All accurate," Amelia said evenly. "I also think you're arrogant enough to believe you can maintain this charade for an entire season without being exposed as the opportunist you are." Now anger sparked hot in her chest. "And I think you're comfortable enough in your inherited privilege that you can't imagine someone fighting for what you were simply given." Silence crashed down. Felix made a strangled sound. Beth and Margaret had gone still as statues. Alexander's eyes narrowed. Then, impossibly, his lips curved. "Well, that's certainly direct. You wanted honesty. I wanted confirmation that you're exactly as dangerous as I suspected." But his tone had shifted, losing some of its edge. "My mother has retained you for the season. Against my recommendation, I might add. But I'll be watching, Miss Harcourt. If you create even a hint of scandal, If you damage this family's reputation in any way, I'll personally ensure you never work in London again. Understood. Good. He turned to leave, then glanced back. Felix and I need new evening wear. We'll require measuring. When can you accommodate us? Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Fine, don't be late. I'm never late, Your Grace. That almost smile returned. No, I don't imagine you are. Then both brothers were gone, their footsteps fading down the corridor. Amelia released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. You just insulted a duke, Margaret whispered. To his face. He insulted me first. He's a duke. And I'm the best dressmaker in London. We're equal, at least in that. But Amelia's hands trembled slightly as she picked up her pencil. Back to work. We have 12 weeks to prove I'm right. The first week passed in a blur of fabric and thread and sleepless nights. Amelia worked with focused intensity, cutting patterns, supervising Beth and Margaret, making adjustments so minute that only she could see the difference. The dowager's evening gown took shape first, sapphire silk that flowed like water, beading that caught light with every movement. When Amelia presented it for a fitting, the dowager stood before the mirror for a long moment without speaking. Well, Amelia asked finally, it's acceptable. From the dowager, that was high praise. The daughter-in-law's wardrobe came next, day dresses in soft colours, modest but elegant. Lady Catherine's mother commissioned 3 gowns, clearly hoping to secure Amelia's discretion with gold. The work was consuming, exhausting, exhilarating. Amelia barely saw the Duke. Which was for the best, she told herself. He'd made his opinion clear. She was an opportunist, a blackmailer, someone to watch and distrust. The fact that she kept remembering his almost smile, the intelligence in his winter blue eyes, was simply a distraction she couldn't afford. Then came Tuesday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Felix arrived first, sprawling in the chair Amelia had set up for measurements with theatrical reluctance. Can't believe I'm doing this. Mrs. Langford never made me stand still for so long. Mrs. Langford also made your last coat too tight in the shoulders, Amelia said, measuring tape in hand. Stand up straight, please. How would you... He paused. You're observant. It's my profession. She noted the measurements, moving with professional efficiency. Arms out. Felix obeyed, but his expression remained sour. You know Mother's doing this to prove a point. Once you fail, and you will fail, she'll bring Mrs. Langford back and forget you ever existed. Then I'd better not fail. You're cocky. You're slouching again. He straightened with an irritated huff. Alexander thinks you're trouble. Alexander expressed that opinion quite thoroughly. He's not wrong. Felix's voice softened slightly. But I suppose I owe you. Catherine's family is grateful. Her father sent a note saying if we ever formalize things, the scandal you prevented would have been devastating. Amelia glanced up, surprised by the genuine emotion in his voice. You care for her. Don't sound so shocked. I'm not a complete rake. Just mostly? He laughed despite himself. Yes, mostly. Then quieter. Thank you. Even if your methods were unorthodox. You're welcome. She finished the last measurement. We're done. You can escape. Felix stood, straightening his cravat. Try not to antagonize my brother too much. He's actually reasonable when you're not insulting his privilege. I'll keep that in mind. No, you won't. He was right. Alexander arrived precisely at 2:15, still wearing riding clothes, mud on his boots. He tracked it across her floor without apparent concern. You're late, Amelia said. I'm a duke. I'm never late. Everyone else is early. But he smiled, and she realized with a jolt that he was joking. Stand here, please. She gestured to the measuring area, suddenly aware of how close they'd be. Professional distance. She'd measured hundreds of men. This was no different. Except it was. Alexander shrugged out of his jacket without being asked, standing in shirt sleeves and waistcoat. Even through the fabric she could see he was broader than his brother, more solid. He held still while she took the first measurements, his breathing steady and controlled. You've been busy, he said as she worked. I've heard nothing but praise for Mother's new gown. Good. Don't let it go to your head. Too late. She moved behind him to measure shoulder width, trying to ignore the warmth radiating from him. Arms out, he complied. You're very direct, Miss Harcourt. Do you speak to all your clients this way? Only the ones who accuse me of being an opportunist. I didn't accuse, I stated fact. So you're direct too, how novel. His laugh surprised her, genuine, unguarded. Are you always this prickly? Are you always this judgmental? Frequently, yes. It's part of my charm. Is that what you call it? She came around to face him, measuring tape in hand. Chest, please, deep breath. He inhaled, and the tape drew taut around him. Their faces were perhaps 12 inches apart. She could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the slight stubble along his jaw. You're staring, he murmured. I'm measuring. You've stopped moving. He was right. Her hands had gone still, tape suspended between them. Amelia stepped back sharply. I need your inseam. Of course you do. Something in his tone made her look up. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Amusement, curiosity, and something else. This is professional, she said firmly. Naturally. I'm not interested in dukes who think you're dangerous? He tilted his head. How disappointing. You're mocking me. I'm intrigued by you. There's a difference. He was quiet while she finished the measurements, but the air felt charged, electric. When she finally stepped away, he reached for his jacket. You're good at this. The work, I mean. Felix is right that his last coat was poorly fitted. I noticed it months ago. Then why didn't you find a better tailor? Loyalty. Mrs. Langford has served this family well. It seemed cruel to dismiss her over minor imperfections. Yet you're letting your mother keep me on. Because you're not a minor imperfection, Miss Harcourt. You're a major disruption. He pulled on his jacket, settling it across his shoulders. The question is whether you'll be a beneficial one. I will be. Confidence again. Does it ever waver? Constantly, she thought. Every day, every time I remember that I blackmailed my way here. No, she said aloud. Liar. But he said it gently. I'll leave you to your work. Thank you for the measurements. He was halfway to the door when Amelia heard herself speak. Your Grace? He turned back. Why did you really come today? Felix's measurements would have sufficed for designing both coats. Alexander regarded her for a long moment. I wanted to see you work, to understand what kind of person blackmails her way into a household and then has the audacity to insult the people she needs. And? What did you learn? That you're exactly as talented and exactly as reckless as I feared. His eyes held hers. I'm curious which quality will define you in the end. Then he was gone, and Amelia was left standing in the middle of her atelier, measuring tape still in hand, wondering why her pulse was racing. Beth emerged from behind the folding screen where she'd been organizing trim. That was professional, Amelia said firmly. Dangerous, Margaret corrected, joining them. He looks at you like you're a puzzle he wants to solve. He looks at me like I'm a problem he wants to eliminate. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Amelia returned to her work table, but her hands felt clumsy, her focus scattered. She kept remembering the moment with the measuring tape, the impossible smallness of the distance between them. Professional, she reminded herself. This is professional, and he's a duke, and you're here to work. The door opened again. Amelia looked up, expecting Beth with more supplies. Instead, a woman stood in the doorway. Elderly, elegant, with silver hair and eyes like flint. Mrs. Edith Langford. So, the older woman said, her voice cold as winter. You're the little opportunist who stole my position. Amelia set down her scissors carefully. Mrs. Langford, I've heard excellent things about your work. Don't patronize me, girl. I know exactly what you did. Blackmailed that foolish boy, manipulated the dowager, wormed your way into a household that should never have welcomed you. She stepped fully into the room, and Amelia saw the fury barely contained beneath her controlled exterior. I dressed duchesses while you were still learning to thread a needle. I built relationships, trust, reputation, and you think you can simply take my place? I think I can earn my own place. By ruining mine? Mrs. Langford's laugh was bitter. 20 years of impeccable service, dismissed overnight because some ambitious seamstress decided to play games with people far above her station. Amelia's temper, usually so controlled, sparked. "I saw an opportunity. You saw weakness, you exploited it. That's not ambition, Miss Harcourt, that's desperation dressed in silk." The words hit harder than Amelia expected, finding the soft, vulnerable place she tried never to acknowledge, because Mrs. Langford wasn't entirely wrong. Amelia had been desperate. She'd seen Felix and Catherine and calculated in an instant exactly how to leverage their fear into her opportunity. But she'd also been right. She was talented enough. She could do this work. "I'm sorry you were dismissed," Amelia said quietly. "Truly, but I won't apologize for fighting for what I deserve." Deserve? Mrs. Langford's smile was sharp as broken glass. "We'll see what you deserve, Miss Harcourt. The season is long, many things can go wrong, fabrics can be ruined, deliveries can be delayed, reputations can be destroyed by a single poorly fitted gown at a critical moment. If you're threatening me, I'm warning you. You've entered a world you don't understand, playing games with people who will discard you the moment you're no longer useful. The Dowager is using you to punish Felix. The Duke thinks you're an entertaining distraction. And when the novelty wears off, you'll be exactly where I am now, dismissed and forgotten." She turned to leave, then paused. "Enjoy your temporary success, Miss Harcourt. I'll enjoy watching you fall." The door closed with a soft click. Amelia stood frozen. Mrs. Langford's words echoing. Threats and truth tangled together until she couldn't separate them. "She's just bitter," Beth said, but her voice lacked conviction. "She's right, though." Margaret had gone pale. "We're vulnerable here. If she sabotages our work, then we'll work harder, triple-check everything, never leave supplies unattended." Amelia forced strength into her voice. "We knew this wouldn't be easy." But that night, alone in her room in the East Wing, listening to the house settle around her, Amelia let herself acknowledge the fear. She'd gambled everything, her reputation, her future, her pride, on 12 weeks in a household where she wasn't wanted. The Dowager tolerated her, Felix resented her, Alexander suspected her, and now she had an enemy who knew exactly how to destroy her. The season stretched ahead like a tightrope over an abyss. One misstep, and she'd lose everything. A week later, Alexander appeared in her atelier with an unexpected invitation. "Mother's hosting a garden party tomorrow," he said without preamble. "Small affair, intimate. She'd like you to attend." Amelia looked up from the gown she was hemming. "To dress guests? To be introduced as our new dressmaker? Mother believes it will generate interest." "And you? What do you believe?" "I believe you'll either shine brilliantly or embarrass us thoroughly. Either way, it should be entertaining." He leaned against the doorframe, casual in a way that shouldn't be attractive, but absolutely was. "Fair warning, the guests will include some of Mother's more traditional friends. They won't appreciate an upstart seamstress joining their tea." "Good thing I'm not seeking their approval. Aren't you? That's literally your entire plan." He had a point. "I'll attend," Amelia said. "What should I wear? Something that doesn't make you look like you're trying too hard, but also doesn't make you look like you're not trying at all. You know, simple." His smile was wicked. "You're enjoying this. More than I should be. Felix was right. You're more entertaining than most of the ton." He pushed off from the doorframe. 2 o'clock tomorrow, Garden Terrace. Try not to insult anyone too grievously." "I make no promises." His laugh followed him down the corridor. Margaret waited until he was gone before speaking. "He flirts with you. He mocks me. Those aren't mutually exclusive. You sound like Beth. Beth is wise." Amelia returned to her hemming, but her concentration was fractured. Alexander was complicated, arrogant but intelligent, suspicious but fair. And yes, he flirted, in that dry, aristocratic way that made her uncertain whether he was genuinely interested or simply bored. It didn't matter. Couldn't matter. She was here to work, not to develop an inconvenient fascination with a man so far above her station that even imagining anything between them was ridiculous. "Focus," she told herself. "You have a garden party to prepare for." The garden party was precisely as uncomfortable as Alexander had implied. 12 women, all titled, all wearing gowns that cost more than Amelia earned in 6 months. They sat beneath white silk canopies, sipping tea from porcelain so fine it was nearly translucent, discussing people and places Amelia had only read about. The Dowager made the introductions with clinical efficiency. "Ladies, may I present Miss Amelia Harcourt, our new dressmaker. Miss Harcourt has proven quite talented. I'm sure many of you will wish to engage her services." The response was tepid at best, polite nods, vague murmurs. One woman, Lady Pemberton, elderly and sharp-eyed, examined Amelia like a specimen under glass. "A dressmaker at a garden party," Lady Pemberton said. "How modern." "How practical," the Dowager corrected smoothly. "Miss Harcourt is staying at Thornhill House for the season. It seemed foolish not to introduce her properly." "And Mrs. Langford?" "No longer with us." Lady Pemberton's eyebrows rose. "After 20 years? How sudden." "These things happen." The Dowager gestured to an empty chair. "Miss Harcourt, please join us." It was a test. Amelia could feel it. See if the dressmaker could hold her own among women who'd been raised for exactly this kind of social warfare. She sat, accepted a cup of tea, and said nothing. "Tell me, Miss Harcourt," another woman, Lady Morrison, said sweetly, "where did you train? Paris, perhaps?" "London. I apprenticed with a modiste in Cheapside." "Cheapside," the word dripped with disdain. "How quaint." "It's practical," Amelia said evenly. "Good light, reasonable rent, excellent access to fabric suppliers." "And now you're in Mayfair, what an ascent." "What a fortunate opportunity," Amelia corrected. Lady Morrison's smile sharpened. "Opportunity?" "Yes. I heard Lord Felix was involved in facilitating your position." The implication was clear, ugly. Amelia set down her teacup with deliberate care. "Lord Felix was kind enough to recognize my work during a minor wardrobe emergency. The Dowager was generous enough to offer me a trial. How fortunate for everyone involved." "Indeed." The tension drew taut. Several women shifted uncomfortably. Lady Pemberton watched with undisguised interest. Then Alexander appeared, strolling across the garden as if he hadn't a care in the world. "Mother, Lady Pemberton, what a lovely afternoon." He bowed slightly, then turned to Amelia. "Miss Harcourt, might I borrow you? I have questions about the coat you're designing." It was a rescue, obvious and deliberate. Amelia wanted to refuse. She didn't need saving, didn't need him to intervene. But the alternative was staying trapped in this nest of vipers. "Of course, Your Grace." She followed him away from the canopy, aware of eyes tracking their movement. "You're welcome," Alexander said once they were out of earshot. "I didn't ask for help." "You were about to insult Lady Morrison. I could see it in your eyes." "She implied I slept my way into this position." "Yes, she's vicious. Also deeply insecure and recently lost a significant gambling debt. Don't take it personally." He led her toward a rose garden, fragrant and secluded. "The trick with these parties is to say very little. Let them form their own conclusions." "That's cowardly." "That's strategic. You can't afford to make more enemies, Amelia." The use of her first name stopped her short. He'd never used it before, always Miss Harcourt with that edge of formality. "Don't do that," she said. "Do what?" "Pretend we're friends or equals, or anything other than what we are, a duke tolerating a dressmaker his mother hired over his objections." Alexander turned to face her fully. "Is that really what you think?" "Isn't it true?" "Partially, initially." He stepped closer and she forced herself not to retreat. "But you're intelligent, Amelia. Surely you've noticed that I keep finding excuses to see you, to talk with you, to provoke you into those wonderfully cutting responses." Her breath caught. "You're bored." "I'm intrigued." "Same thing." "Not remotely." His voice dropped, intimate. "You fascinate me. You fight for everything I was simply given. You refuse to be diminished even when faced with women determined to make you feel small. You look at me like I'm a man, not a title. I shouldn't be looking at you at all." "But you are." She was. Against all reason, she was. "This is a mistake," Amelia said quietly. "I'm here to work. To prove myself. Getting tangled up with you will only complicate things, destroy things. If there's even a whisper of scandal, I lose everything. You know that." "I do." But he didn't step back. "Which is why I'm being extraordinarily careful." Why I'm having this conversation in a garden where no one can overhear us. Why I'm not doing what I actually want to do, which is... His smile was slow, devastating. You're clever. Figure it out. Then he turned and walked back toward the party, leaving Amelia standing alone among the roses with her heart racing and her carefully constructed walls crumbling. This is dangerous, she thought. He's dangerous. But the traitorous part of her, the part that had gambled everything on one reckless moment, whispered, "Yes, and isn't that exactly what you want?" The next week brought 3 commissioned gowns from ladies who'd attended the garden party. Small victories. Proof that Amelia's work was being noticed, despite the social resistance. Alexander continued to find reasons to visit the atelier. A question about coat buttons. A request for Mother's opinion on fabric. Each visit was brief, proper, completely innocent. Each visit also left Amelia unsettled for hours afterward. "He's courting you," Beth said finally, after Alexander had left following a 10-minute discussion about waistcoat styles. In that aristocratic, "I'm not courting you, but I'm absolutely courting you" way. He's amusing himself. He brings you books. Beth gestured to the small stack on Amelia's work table. Poetry, a novel, a treatise on color theory, all delivered casually, as if they meant nothing. Men don't bring books to women they're just amusing themselves with. He's a duke. I'm a dressmaker. There's no future in whatever this is. Maybe not, but there's a present. Amelia wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she was focused solely on work, on proving herself, on securing her future. But the truth was more complicated. She looked forward to Alexander's visits, to his dry humor, his intelligence, the way he actually listened when she spoke about design and fabric, and the tiny details that made a garment transcendent instead of merely adequate. He treated her like an equal, even when they both knew she wasn't. It was intoxicating. It was also terrifying. Then came the evening when everything shifted. Amelia was working late, alone in the atelier. Beth and Margaret had retired hours ago. The house was quiet, settled into that particular silence that only very old, very grand buildings achieved at night. She was hand-finishing beadwork on the Dowager's ball gown, the centerpiece garment that would debut at Lady Ashford's ball next week, when she heard footsteps. Alexander appeared in the doorway, still in evening clothes, cravat slightly loosened. "You're still working. The ball is in 6 days. It's nearly midnight. Then I'm running out of time." But she set down her needle, suddenly aware of how alone they were. "Was there something you needed?" "I was returning from dinner. Saw your light still on, thought I'd..." He trailed off, then smiled ruefully. "I wanted to see you, that's the honest answer." The admission hung between them. "Alexander, I know. This is unwise. You've said so repeatedly. You're correct." He leaned against the doorframe and she saw the weariness in his face. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't find you remarkable. I'm tired of inventing excuses to see you. I'm tired of caring about propriety, when what I really want is to know you better." Amelia's hands had gone still. "What are you asking?" "Nothing, everything, I don't know." He laughed quietly. "You've thoroughly disrupted my carefully organized life, Miss Harcourt. I'm not certain whether to thank you or curse you." She should send him away, should reinforce the boundaries they both knew existed. Instead, she heard herself say, "Would you like to see the gown?" He blinked. "What?" "Your mother's ball gown. You've been financing my work. You should see what you're paying for." It was an excuse, transparent and flimsy. They both knew it. "I'd like that," Alexander said quietly. Amelia lifted the gown from its protective covering. Even unfinished, it was stunning. Deep sapphire silk that seemed to hold light, beading in silver and crystal that would catch candlelight with every movement. The neckline was elegant without being provocative, the waist precisely fitted, the skirt designed to flow like water. "It's beautiful," Alexander said. He'd moved closer without her noticing, standing near enough that she could feel his warmth. "You're extraordinary at this. Thank you. That's not a platitude. I mean it." His voice was low, serious. "You have a gift, real, genuine talent, the kind that shouldn't be hidden in a cheapside shop, taking commissions for merchant wives. The merchant wives paid well enough. But they didn't challenge you. They didn't see what you could really do." He was looking at her now, not the gown. You belong exactly where you are. Whatever method you used to get here, you've earned your place. The words undid something in her chest. Your mother doesn't think so. Mother's reconsidering. She won't admit it yet, but she's impressed. His hand lifted, almost touching her cheek, then dropped. I should go. Yes. Neither of them moved. Amelia! The door banged open. Felix stood there, slightly drunk, eyes bright with alarm. Thank God. Alexander, you need to come. Mother's received a letter, something about Mrs. Langford spreading rumors. What kind of rumors? Alexander's voice had gone sharp. About her. About Amelia. Felix's gaze flicked between them, clearly noting the proximity. Someone's telling people that she only got this position because she's... He hesitated. Say it, Amelia said flatly. Because you're sleeping with me, or Alexander. The story keeps changing. Felix looked miserable. Lady Morrison heard it at the opera tonight. She told Mother immediately. The moment, fragile, promising, shattered. Alexander's expression went cold. Where is Mother? Her sitting room. She wants to see all of us now. The Dowager's private sitting room felt like a courtroom. She sat in her favorite chair, spine straight, face carved from marble. The offending letter lay on the table beside her, the paper expensive, the handwriting elegant. Sit, she said. They sat. Alexander composed, Felix squirming, Amelia forcing herself to stillness. Lady Morrison, the Dowager said without preamble, has informed me that rumors are circulating about Miss Harcourt's methods for securing her position here. The rumors are ugly, specific and growing. Mrs. Langford, Amelia said quietly, almost certainly. She has motive and connections. The Dowager's gaze fixed on Amelia. The question is how we respond. We ignore it, Alexander said. Dignifying rumors with a response gives them power. We can't ignore this. If these stories gain traction, they'll destroy not only Miss Harcourt's reputation, but ours as well. People will ask why we retained a dressmaker of questionable morals. They'll question Felix's judgment, your judgment. The Dowager's fingers drummed once on the chair arm. I'm considering releasing Miss Harcourt from her contract. No. The word escaped before Amelia could stop it. You have an alternative suggestion? Let me finish the work I've started. Let me dress your family for Lady Ashford's ball. If the gowns are exceptional, if they're so beautiful that everyone forgets the rumors, then you've lost nothing. If they're not, Amelia's throat tightened, then I'll leave quietly. And the rumors in the meantime? I'll endure them. The Dowager studied her for a long moment. You're stubborn. I'm desperate, Amelia corrected. I've worked too hard to give up now. Something shifted in the Dowager's expression. Not warmth, exactly, but a kind of recognition. Very well. You have until the ball, 1 week. If your work is exceptional, you stay. If not, or if the rumors worsen, you leave immediately. Agreed? Agreed. Then we're done here. Felix, go to bed. Alexander, she glanced at her eldest son. A word. Amelia and Felix left together, walking in silence until they reached the main staircase. I'm sorry, Felix said quietly. This is my fault. If I hadn't been reckless with Catherine, then you'd be married to someone your family chose, instead of someone you actually care for, Amelia said. Don't apologize for wanting happiness, even if it ruins you. I'm not ruined yet. But as she climbed to her room, Amelia felt the weight of the week ahead pressing down like physical force. 1 week, 7 days to create gowns so perfect that they eclipsed scandal. 7 days to prove she belonged. 7 days before she lost everything. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she returned to the atelier and worked with focused fury, every stitch perfect, every bead precisely placed. The Dowager's ball gown had to be flawless, had to be so breathtaking that when she walked into Lady Ashford's ball, every eye would be on the gown, not the gossip. Beth arrived at dawn to find Amelia still working, her eyes red-rimmed, but her hands steady. You need rest, Beth said. I need perfection. Amelia tied off a thread. Help me with the hem. I want to add 1 more layer of beading. They worked together through the morning. Margaret joined them after breakfast, and the 3 of them fell into the rhythm they'd perfected over years of collaboration. By evening, the dowager's gown was complete. It was a masterpiece. Even Amelia, exhausted and terrified, could see it. The sapphire silk seemed to glow from within. The beading caught light like captured stars. The cut was so precise that it would make the dowager look 10 years younger without appearing to try. "It's perfect," Margaret whispered. "It has to be." Amelia carefully covered it. "Tomorrow I start on Lady Catherine's gown, then Felix's sister-in-law. Then—" "Tomorrow you sleep," Beth interrupted, "for at least 4 hours. You're no good to anyone if you collapse." She was right. Amelia's hands were starting to tremble with fatigue. But when she finally crawled into bed, sleep wouldn't come. Her mind spun through worst scenarios. Mrs. Langford spreading more rumors. The dowager dismissing her before the ball. Alexander deciding she was more trouble than fascination. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Miss Harcourt." A maid stood in the doorway. "His Grace requests your presence in the library." Amelia's stomach clenched. "Now?" "He said it's important." She threw a wrapper over her nightgown and followed the maid downstairs, heart hammering. The library was dimly lit, fire burning low. Alexander stood by the window, still in evening clothes, a glass of brandy in his hand. "You sent for me," Amelia said. He turned. Something in his expression made her breath catch. "I spoke with Mother about the rumors, about your position here. And she's genuinely considering keeping you. The gown you've created, she showed me the preliminary work. Amelia, it's extraordinary." He set down his glass and crossed to her. "But the rumors are worse than she admitted. Mrs. Langford has been systematic, vicious. She's not just questioning your professional ethics. She's destroying your character entirely." "I see. I want to help. I can speak with certain people, make it clear that the rumors are baseless." "No," Amelia shook her head. "If you defend me, it confirms what people suspect. That I'm that we're what?" His voice dropped. "Involved? We're not involved, aren't we?" He stepped closer and she saw the tension in his shoulders, the careful control. "I think about you constantly. I manufacture reasons to see you. I lie awake wondering if you're working too hard, if you're safe, if you're happy. If that's not involvement, what is it? A distraction. For both of us." "You're right." But he didn't move away. "You're absolutely right. This is unwise, inappropriate, potentially devastating to everything you're trying to build. Then why are we having this conversation? Because I'm tired of pretending I don't want you." The admission was raw, honest. "Because tomorrow you might be dismissed, and I'll never have told you that you're the most fascinating woman I've ever met. Because life is short and arbitrary and cruel, and I've spent 33 years doing what's expected, and just once I'd like to do what I actually want." Amelia couldn't breathe. "What do you want?" "This." He closed the remaining distance between them, his hand lifting to cup her cheek. "Tell me no, tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this too." She should. Every logical, practical, self-preserving instinct screamed at her to step back, to reinforce the boundaries, to protect everything she'd worked for. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "I can't tell you that." His kiss was careful at first, tentative, questioning. She answered by rising on her toes, her hands finding his shoulders, and then, careful, shattered into something deeper. He tasted like brandy and want, and she'd never been kissed like this, like she was precious and desired and absolutely necessary. The kiss ended slowly, reluctantly. Alexander stayed near, his breath warm against her skin. "This complicates everything. I know. If anyone finds out—" "They won't. They can't." Amelia forced herself to step back, already missing his warmth. "This was a mistake. Was it? It has to be. Alexander, I'm barely holding on here. If there's even a whisper that you and I are—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I have 6 days until the ball. 6 days to prove I'm worth keeping. I can't afford this. I can't afford you." Pain flashed across his face, quickly masked. "You're right. Of course you're right. I should go. Amelia," he caught her hand as she turned. "Whatever happens at the ball, whatever Mother decides, I want you to know something. You earned your place here. Not through blackmail, not through manipulation. Through sheer undeniable talent. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." The words nearly undid her. She squeezed his hand once, then fled before she could do something catastrophic, like cry or kiss him again or admit that she was falling for a man she could never have. The next 5 days blurred together in a haze of silk and exhaustion and constant gnawing fear. Amelia completed Lady Catherine's gown, rose pink with delicate embroidery, the sister-in-law's dress, sage green that complemented her colouring perfectly. New evening wear for both Felix and Alexander, cut so precisely that they looked like different men when they tried them on. Each piece was perfect, had to be perfect, and each day brought new whispers. Amelia heard them from servants, saw them in the way certain ladies who'd commissioned gowns suddenly sent regretful notes cancelling their orders. Mrs. Langford's poison was spreading, systematic and devastating. Alexander kept his distance, as they'd agreed, but Amelia caught him watching her sometimes, his expression unreadable, and she had to force herself not to go to him. The day before the ball, disaster struck. Amelia arrived at the atelier to find the door ajar. Her stomach dropped. Inside chaos, fabric shredded. Beading scattered across the floor like broken stars, and the dowager's ball gown, the centerpiece, the masterpiece, slashed across the bodice, silk ruined beyond repair. Beth stood frozen by the door, tears streaming down her face. "I came early to press the gowns. Found it like this. Amelia, I'm so sorry. I should have locked." "This isn't your fault." Amelia's voice sounded distant to her own ears. She moved through the destruction mechanically, assessing damage. Most of the gowns could be salvaged, but the dowager's, there wasn't enough time. The ball was tomorrow night. She'd need at least 3 days to recreate the gown from scratch. "We're finished," Margaret said quietly. "We're actually finished." The door opened. Felix stood there, taking in the scene with growing horror. My God, what happened? Sabotage. Amelia's hands were shaking now, shock setting in. Someone broke in during the night and destroyed everything. Mrs. Langford. Who else? Amelia sank onto a stool, suddenly unable to stand. It doesn't matter. I can't fix this, not in time. Mother will understand. Will she? Amelia laughed, the sound brittle. I had one job, one chance to prove myself, and I've failed. This wasn't your fault. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. The result is the same. She looked at the ruined gown, at months of work destroyed in minutes, and felt something break inside her chest. Maybe Mrs. Langford was right. Maybe I don't belong in their world. Maybe I never did. That's not true. The new voice made them all turn. Alexander stood in the doorway, his face gone white with fury. He took in the destruction with a single glance, then crossed to Amelia in 3 strides. Who did this? Does it matter? Yes, it absolutely matters. He pulled her to her feet, hands on her shoulders. Amelia, look at me. This is sabotage, deliberate criminal destruction. We can prove it was Mrs. Langford. How? She'll have an alibi. She's too clever to be caught directly. Amelia pulled away from him, from the comfort she desperately wanted but couldn't afford. It's over, Alexander. I lost. You didn't lose. You were cheated. The result is the same. Your mother's ball is tomorrow. I have no gown to present. I've failed the one test that mattered. She looked at the wreckage of her dreams spread across the floor. I need to pack. Please tell your mother I'll be gone by morning. No. Alexander's voice was steel. You're not leaving. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. He turned to Felix. How many women does Mother know who are approximately her size? Felix blinked. Several? Why? Because we're going to visit every one of them tonight. We're going to borrow their finest gowns, and tomorrow Amelia is going to modify one to fit Mother perfectly. Alexander looked back at Amelia. You can do that, can't you? Alter an existing gown in one day? Theoretically, but nothing. You're the most talented dressmaker in London. Prove it. His intensity was almost frightening. Mrs. Langford destroyed your work because she knew it was extraordinary, because she knew that gown would secure your position permanently. Don't let her win by giving up. Amelia wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this plan could fail. Instead, she looked at the ruined silk, at Beth's hopeful expression, at Alexander's absolute certainty. "All right," she heard herself say. "All right, let's try." They spent the night collecting gowns from 6 different houses. Each time Alexander used his influence to gain access, to borrow precious garments with vague promises and his ducal authority. By dawn, they had 5 possibilities spread across Amelia's work table. She chose a deep burgundy silk that was close to the dowager's size, with exquisite fabric, but dated styling. Then she began to work. Beth and Margaret assisted, all 3 of them moving with desperate efficiency. They took apart the bodice, restructured the neckline, added panels at the waist for proper fit. Amelia had memorized her mother's measurements so thoroughly that she worked without checking notes, her hands guided by instinct and practice. Alexander appeared periodically with food they barely touched, with encouragement they desperately needed. 16 hours later, as sunset painted the atelier gold, Amelia tied off the final thread. The gown was beautiful, not the masterpiece she'd created before. There hadn't been time for beading, for the intricate details that made work transcendent. But it was elegant, refined, perfectly fitted. It would make the dowager look magnificent. "It's done," Amelia said, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. Alexander had been reading in the corner, giving them space to work. Now he stood, examining the gown with careful attention. "It's extraordinary. It's adequate. It's more than that, and you know it." He turned to her. "Amelia, I know this isn't what you envisioned, but you took disaster and created something beautiful. That's not failure. That's resilience. We'll see what your mother thinks." But when the dowager arrived for her fitting an hour later, Amelia saw the moment her expression shifted from skepticism to surprise, to something that might have been approval. "This isn't the gown you showed me before," the dowager said. "No, Your Grace, there was an incident. This is a reconstruction." "An incident?" The dowager's tone made clear she knew exactly what kind of incident. "Mrs. Langford?" "Very likely, though I have no proof." The dowager turned slowly before the mirror, examining the gown from every angle. The silence stretched until Amelia's nerves were screaming. "It's good," the dowager said finally. "Better than good. You took an outdated gown from Lady Whitmore's collection and transformed it into something I'd be proud to wear. That requires not only skill but creativity and adaptability. Thank you, Your Grace." "Don't thank me yet. The ball is tomorrow. If this gown performs as well as it looks, we'll discuss extending your contract. If not..." The dowager let the threat hang unfinished. After she left, Amelia finally allowed herself to collapse into a chair. Beth and Margaret had already retired, exhausted beyond speech. Only Alexander remained standing by the window, watching London's lights flicker to life. "You did it," he said quietly. "I survived. Barely. That counts." He crossed to her, and this time when he pulled her to her feet, she didn't resist. "Amelia, I need to tell you something about tomorrow." "What about it?" "I'm going to ask you to attend the ball, as my guest." Her heart stopped. "Alexander, that's dangerous, scandalous, potentially devastating to everything you've built." "I know." His hands tightened on hers. "But Mrs. Langford has spent weeks destroying your reputation through whispers. The only way to counter that is with a public declaration that you're under my protection, that you're valued by this family. If you do that, the rumors will get worse. Not if I make it clear that my interest is professional, that I recognize exceptional talent when I see it." His voice softened. "You deserve to see your work displayed properly, to watch the dowager wear that gown and hear the praise, to stand in that ballroom as yourself, not hidden in the background. What if it backfires? Then we face it together." The words undid her completely. She leaned into him just for a moment, letting herself take comfort in his solid presence. "Why are you doing this? Why risk your reputation for someone like me?" "Because you're not someone like you. You're Amelia Harcourt. You're brilliant and stubborn, and you fight for what you deserve, even when the entire world tries to keep you small." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, chaste and devastating. "And because I'm falling in love with you and I'm tired of pretending I'm not." Amelia's breath caught. "Alexander, don't tell me all the reasons it's impossible. I know them already. Just consider attending tomorrow. Please." She should refuse. Should maintain the boundaries, protect herself, be sensible. Yes, she said instead. I'll come. His smile was like sunrise. Good. Wear something that makes you feel invincible. You're going to need it. Lady Ashford's ball was the event of the season. The ballroom glittered with candlelight and jewels, filled with every important family in London. Amelia stood at the entrance in a gown she'd made months ago, deep emerald silk, simpler than the creations she'd designed for the Ashworth family, but elegant nonetheless, and felt terror war with determination. Alexander appeared at her side, elegant in the evening wear she'd designed, and offered his arm. Ready? No. Perfect. Neither am I. But his smile was steady. Just stay close. Let me handle the worst of it. They descended the stairs together. The effect was immediate. Conversation stuttered. Heads turned. Amelia felt the weight of every eye in the room, assessing her, judging her, remembering the rumors. Then the dowager swept into view and everything else fell away. The gown was perfection. The burgundy silk caught candlelight. The restructured bodice made her look regal, and she moved through the room like a queen. Women crowded around her immediately, asking about the dress, touching the fabric, demanding to know who'd created such elegance. Miss Amelia Harcourt, the dowager said clearly, her voice carrying across the ballroom. My dressmaker for the season. I'm quite pleased with her work. More heads turned. Amelia felt Alexander's arm tighten beneath her hand. There's Lady Morrison, he murmured. She's approaching. Steady. Lady Morrison arrived with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Miss Harcourt, how unexpected to see you here. As a guest, no less. The dowager's gown required last-minute adjustments, Alexander said smoothly. I thought it appropriate to invite Miss Harcourt so she could ensure everything remained perfect throughout the evening. Professional consultation. How thorough of you, Your Grace. Lady Morrison's gaze raked over Amelia. Tell me, Miss Harcourt, is it true you trained in Cheapside? Yes, my lady. How rustic. And yet here you are, dressing duchesses. What a remarkable ascent. One wonders how it was achieved. The implication was clear. Ugly. Amelia felt anger spark hot in her chest, but before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Talent, Lady Morrison. It was achieved through talent. Mrs. Langford stood behind them, elegant in a gown that was beautiful, but noticeably less impressive than the dowager's. Her smile was sharp as broken glass. Mrs. Langford, Alexander said coolly. How unexpected. Lady Ashford and I are old friends. She invited me despite my reduced circumstances. Mrs. Langford's gaze fixed on Amelia. I wanted to see the girl who replaced me, wanted to understand what made her so special, that the Ashworth family would abandon 2 decades of loyal service. Mrs. Langford, Amelia began. No, please, let me speak. The older woman's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby guests. You're all wondering about Miss Harcourt, aren't you? About how a nobody from Cheapside suddenly became the most sought-after dressmaker in Mayfair? Well, I can tell you. Alexander moved as if to intervene, but Amelia stopped him with a hand on his arm. Let her talk. Mrs. Langford's smile widened. She blackmailed her way in, caught Lord Felix in a compromising position, and leveraged it into employment. Then she seduced the Duke to secure her position permanently. Every gown, every commission, every moment of praise, built on manipulation and scandal. The ballroom had gone silent. Amelia felt the weight of that silence like a physical blow. This was it. The moment where everything she'd built came crashing down. She could deny it, but who would believe her? Mrs. Langford was established, connected, convincing. Then Alexander spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the entire ballroom with unmistakable authority. Mrs. Langford, you've just made several claims. Allow me to address them in order. He released Amelia's arm and took a step forward, placing himself slightly between her and Mrs. Langford. First, Miss Harcourt did indeed encounter my brother in an awkward situation. Her response was to protect his reputation at personal risk to herself. That's not blackmail. That's discretion and quick thinking. Your Grace, I'm not finished. Steel had entered Alexander's tone. Second, my mother hired Miss Harcourt because she recognized exceptional talent. I initially opposed the decision. I thought Miss Harcourt was an opportunist. I was wrong. He glanced back at Amelia. She's the most skilled dressmaker I've encountered. Her work speaks for itself. Look at my mother's gown. Look at the gowns she's created for Lady Catherine, for my sister-in-law. They're extraordinary. But the rumors are lies. Systematic, vicious lies spread by someone bitter about being replaced. And I can prove it. Alexander gestured, and Felix appeared from the crowd, accompanied by a young woman Amelia recognized as one of Mrs. Langford's former assistants. "This is Miss Sarah Fletcher," Felix said. "She worked for Mrs. Langford until 2 weeks ago. Sarah, please tell these people what you told me." The girl was pale, terrified, but she lifted her chin. "Mrs. Langford paid me to spread rumors about Miss Harcourt, told me to say I'd seen her in compromising situations with Lord Felix. When that didn't work fast enough, she had me sabotage Miss Harcourt's fabric deliveries. And 3 nights ago, she gave me a key to Thornhill House and told me to destroy the gowns Miss Harcourt had been working on." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Langford's face had gone white. "That's a lie. The girl is lying." "I have the key," Sarah continued, pulling it from her reticule. "And letters. Mrs. Langford wrote me letters with instructions. I kept them because I was afraid of what she might do if I refused." Felix took the letters and key, holding them up for all to see. "These are dated, detailed, undeniable." The silence that followed was absolute. Mrs. Langford stood frozen, her carefully constructed attack crumbling around her. She took my position. 20 years of service dismissed for some nobody." "You were dismissed," the Dowager said, her voice cutting across the ballroom like a blade, "because Miss Harcourt is better. Your work was adequate. Hers is exceptional. That's not injustice, Mrs. Langford. That's the market. You don't understand. I understand that you've spent weeks destroying an innocent woman's reputation out of spite. I understand that you committed criminal acts to sabotage her work. I understand that you're petty, vindictive, and beneath the respect I once had for you." The Dowager moved to stand beside Amelia, a gesture of unmistakable support. "You're no longer welcome in my home or at any event my family attends. I suggest you leave." Mrs. Langford looked around the ballroom, seeing the faces turned away, the disgust, the social death sentence she'd just received. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it. Without another word, she turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted to let her pass. When she was gone, the silence broke into furious whispers. Amelia stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. Alexander turned back to her. "Dance with me." "What?" "Dance with me right now, in front of everyone." He offered his hand. "Show them you're not ashamed. Show them you belong." "Alexander, I don't... Trust me, please." She took his hand. They walked onto the dance floor as the orchestra began a waltz. Alexander pulled her into position, proper, appropriate, exactly the right distance for public dancing. But his eyes held hers with an intensity that made her forget the crowd, the scandal, everything but him. "You defended me," she said quietly as they turned. "Of course I did." "You risked your reputation. I told the truth. That's not risk. That's duty." His hand tightened at her waist. "Amelia, I meant what I said last night. I'm falling in love with you. No, I've already fallen, and I don't care who knows it. We can't. We can. Maybe not immediately. Maybe not in the conventional way. But I'm a duke. I have resources, freedom, power. I can change the rules if I need to." He smiled. "And you're Amelia Harcourt. You're not conventional either." The waltz swirled around them. Amelia saw faces watching, some disapproving, some curious, some grudgingly impressed. She saw Lady Catherine beaming, Felix raising a glass in salute, the Dowager nodding once with what might have been approval. "What are you saying?" Amelia asked. "I'm saying I choose you, publicly, irrevocably. I'm saying that when the season ends, I want you to stay. Not as a temporary dressmaker, but as someone permanent, as..." He paused. "As whatever you're willing to be, companion, partner. Eventually, if you'll have me, wife." Amelia's breath stopped. "Alexander, I know it's absurd. I know we've only known each other 6 weeks. I know you have every reason to refuse me. But you gambled everything on one reckless moment 6 weeks ago, and it changed your life. I'm asking you to gamble once more. On me. On us. The waltz was ending. Soon they'd return to the crowd, to reality, to all the complications she could already see looming ahead. But right now, in this moment, with Alexander looking at her like she was precious and necessary and chosen, Amelia made her choice. Yes, she said. Yes to all of it. His smile was devastating. You're sure? I'm terrified. But yes. The music ended. Around them, couples were bowing, separating, returning to the edges of the ballroom. Alexander kept her hand in his a moment longer than was strictly proper, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture too intimate for public view. Tomorrow, he murmured. We'll figure everything out tomorrow. Tomorrow, she agreed. They separated. Amelia moved through the rest of the evening in a daze, accepting compliments on the dowager's gown, taking commissions from women who suddenly wanted to be associated with the dressmaker who'd survived scandal and sabotage. Lady Catherine pulled her aside to thank her for keeping her secret. Felix toasted her skill. The dowager informed her that her position was now permanent. But all Amelia could think about was Alexander's hand at her waist, his declaration, the impossible future he'd offered her. The season was supposed to end in 6 more weeks. Instead, Amelia suspected it was 3 months later. Amelia stood in her new atelier, larger than the one at Thornhill House located in Mayfair, with her name painted in gold above the door, and surveyed her domain with quiet satisfaction. Beth and Margaret were training 2 new assistants. The commission book was full through next season, and on her finger sat a ring with a single perfect emerald, an engagement announced last week to surprised but ultimately accepting society. The door opened. Alexander entered, elegant in afternoon dress, carrying a parcel. These arrived from Paris, the lace you ordered. Perfect. Lady Ashford's gown needs it. Amelia took the parcel, then paused. You don't have to keep delivering my supplies, Your Grace. You're a duke, not an errand boy. I'm your fiancé. That means I get to spoil you however I choose. He pulled her close right there in the middle of her busy shop and kissed her with thorough disregard for propriety. When he released her, Amelia was breathless. Your mother will hear about this. Mother's the one who suggested I visit more often. She finds our courtship refreshingly direct. That's one way to describe it. Would you prefer I be more traditional? Court you from a careful distance? Write terrible poetry about your eyes? Oh, no, Amelia laughed. This is better. Good. He settled into the chair she kept for him, watching her work with the contentment of a man completely at peace. Felix and Catherine announced their engagement yesterday. I believe your intervention at that ball saved more than just reputations. I'm glad. Amelia began unpacking the lace, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. Though I still can't believe this is my life. 6 months ago I was unknown. Now I'm dressing duchesses and engaged to a duke. It's absurd. It's earned. Alexander's voice was serious. You fought for this, Amelia. You risked everything, survived sabotage, proved yourself over and over. Don't diminish that. She looked at him, this man who'd started as her skeptic and become her fiercest defender. I blackmailed your brother. Yes, and then you proved you were worth the opportunity you'd seized. That's not crime, darling. That's courage. Darling. He called her that now, casually, as if she'd always been precious to him. Maybe she had been. Maybe from the moment she'd stood in that atelier and insulted his privilege to his face, she'd been changing his carefully controlled life just as much as he'd been changing hers. I love you, Amelia said. The words still felt new, fragile, impossibly precious. Alexander's smile was slow and genuine, and entirely hers. I know. You tell me every time I bring you fabric samples. It's wonderfully transparent. I do not. You absolutely do. Yesterday you said I love this silk 3 times, but you were looking at me. That's because you were blocking the silk. Excuses. But he stood, crossing to her, pulling her against him with the easy intimacy of people who belong together. I love you too, Amelia Harcourt. I love your ambition and your skill and your refusal to be small. I love that you gambled everything on one impossible moment and won. I love that you chose me despite every sensible reason not to. I'm not always sensible. Thank God for that. He kissed her again, slower this time, thorough and tender. When they finally broke apart, Amelia rested her forehead against his chest and let herself feel, just for a moment, the staggering improbability of her happiness. She'd waited 5 years for recognition. She'd earned it, not by blackmail alone, but by refusing to give up when every obstacle appeared, by working harder than everyone around her, by believing, even when terrified, that she deserved to be seen. And now she was, by society, by clients who competed for her services, by a man who'd looked past her methods to see her merit. "I should get back to work," Amelia said reluctantly. "Should you?" Alexander's hands traced idle patterns along her spine. "I have 3 gowns due next week." Very responsible. One of us has to be. True, I'm terrible at responsibility. That's why I keep delegating things to capable people. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Very well. Back to work. I'll return this evening. We're dining with Mother, remember?" "How could I forget? She wants to discuss wedding plans. She wants to micromanage our entire wedding. There's a difference." Alexander stepped back, his expression fond. "Just remember, this is our day. We can choose whatever feels right. Even if I want to wear a dress I made myself instead of commissioning one from Paris? Especially then. Though Mother will faint dramatically. I'm counting on it." His laugh followed him out the door. Amelia returned to her work table, unpacking lace, her hands steady and sure. Beth and Margaret exchanged knowing smiles. "You're happy," Beth observed. "I am," Amelia admitted. "Good. You deserve it." Did she? Amelia wasn't certain. She'd blackmailed, gambled, fought dirty when necessary. She'd made enemies and seized opportunities that weren't freely offered. She'd refused to wait patiently for recognition that might never come. But she'd also worked harder than anyone. She'd proven herself over and over. She'd survived sabotage and scandal and social warfare. She'd earned her place through skill and stubborn determination. And she'd found love, unexpected, improbable love, with a man who saw her completely and chose her anyway. Maybe that was what deserving meant. Not being perfect, but fighting for what mattered. Not waiting for permission, but creating opportunity. Not being small to make others comfortable, but standing tall and daring the world to look away. She'd spent 5 years invisible. She'd waited long enough. Now, finally, she was seen. She was chosen. She was exactly where she belonged. Amelia picked up her needle and thread and returned to the work she loved. Epilogue. The wedding took place in late autumn, when London's parks blazed gold and crimson. It was smaller than the Dowager had initially wanted, only family and close friends, held in the Thornhill House gardens rather than at a cathedral. Amelia wore a gown of her own design, cream silk with delicate gold embroidery, elegant without being ostentatious. She'd spent weeks perfecting it, and when she looked at herself in the mirror on her wedding morning, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, because she looked entirely, authentically herself. "You're beautiful," the Dowager said, appearing behind her. Their relationship had evolved over the months into something complicated but genuine, not quite friendship, but mutual respect, tinged with unexpected affection. "Alexander is fortunate." "I think we're both fortunate," Amelia said. Perhaps." The Dowager adjusted a fold of silk with critical eyes. "I was wrong about you initially. I thought you were an opportunist." "I was an opportunist." "Yes, but you were also talented enough to back it up. That's the difference between ambition and delusion." The Dowager stepped back, examining her work. "You'll do well in this family, Amelia. You're strong enough to handle us." It was, from the Dowager, the highest possible praise. The ceremony was simple. Felix stood up as Alexander's witness, beaming with genuine happiness. Lady Catherine sat in the front row, her hand resting on her small but growing belly. Their own wedding had taken place 6 weeks earlier. Beth and Margaret watched from the side, both dabbing at tears. When Alexander turned to face Amelia at the altar, his expression made her breath catch. Joy, wonder, absolute certainty. "I love you," he murmured as they joined hands. "I love you too." The vows were traditional, But Amelia heard them differently now, to honor and cherish, to face life together, to choose each other daily, deliberately. She'd spent 5 years fighting to be seen. Now she stood before witnesses, claiming her place beside a man who'd looked at her and seen not what she lacked, but what she was. Brilliant, stubborn, worthy of everything she'd fought for. When the vicar pronounced them married, Alexander kissed her to enthusiastic applause. Then they walked back down the aisle together, hand in hand, toward a future Amelia couldn't have imagined 6 months ago. At the reception, surrounded by people who'd once doubted her and now celebrated her, Amelia caught sight of a young woman hovering at the edge of the gathering. She was poorly dressed but carried herself with careful dignity. A portfolio case hung at her side. Amelia recognized that look, hunger mixed with hope, desperation dressed in determination. She excused herself from a conversation with Lady Pemberton and approached the girl. "Can I help you?" The young woman startled. "Miss Your Grace, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come. But I heard you were the best dressmaker in London, and I thought maybe you might look at my designs. I know it's your wedding day, What's your name?" "Emma. Emma Price." "Do you have talent, Emma?" Yes, I think so. I hope so." Amelia remembered standing outside grand houses, hoping someone would give her a chance. Remembered years of closed doors and dismissals and waiting for recognition that never came. "Come to my shop Monday morning," she said. "Bring your portfolio. If your work is good, I'll train you. If it's exceptional, I'll partner with you." Emma's eyes went wide. "You... Really? Really, but Emma, don't waste the opportunity. If I give you a chance, you earn your place through work. Nothing less." "Yes, Your Grace, thank you. Thank you so much." Amelia squeezed the girl's hand once, then returned to her wedding, to Alexander, who was watching with amused affection. "Recruiting on our wedding day?" he asked. "Paying forward. Someone should have given me a chance years ago. Maybe things would have been easier. Maybe. Or maybe you needed to fight for it to appreciate what you'd won." He pulled her into his arms for a dance. "Either way, you're extraordinary, and you're mine." "Yours," she agreed. "Finally, impossibly mine too." They danced as the sun set over London, painting the sky gold and rose. Around them, guests celebrated. The Dowager smiled with rare warmth. Felix and Catherine whispered together. Beth and Margaret toasted their success. And Amelia Harcourt, now Amelia Ashworth, Duchess of Thornhill, let herself feel the full weight of her improbable victory. She'd gambled on one reckless moment. She'd fought when told to accept. She'd refused to be invisible. She'd survived sabotage and scandal and the relentless pressure of proving herself worthy. And she'd won. Not just the position or the recognition or the commissions that now filled her days. She'd won herself, her voice, her place, her choice. She was seen. She was chosen. She was free. And she would make certain that every girl who came after her, every Emma Price who stood outside hoping for a chance, would find a door open instead of closed. That was worth fighting for. Worth gambling everything. Worth the 5 years she'd waited and every obstacle she'd overcome. She'd earned this. Every impossible, beautiful moment of it. The end. Thank you for staying until the last thread was sewn. If Amelia's fight reminded you that worth isn't given, it's claimed, fought for, earned through stubborn refusal to stay small, then this story was for you. Subscribe so you never miss a story about second chances, impossible gambles, and love that sees you first. You're the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here.